chapter 1158, back from the break, and at the end of 1157 I said I wanted at least one more chapter of build-up to the God Valley incident because that build-up would make it feel grander. Like the past few chapters have done since Rox's introduction, my wish has been granted because we still haven't reached the incident yet. There's so much more content to go through before then, exactly as I hoped for. And this stretch of chapters before Rox or the God Valley incident ever entered the picture, this flashback as a whole has been glorious. Everything I could have asked for and so much more, and this chapter continues that trend straight 10 out of 10, no questions about it, and I will of course get to it, but the biggest shocks come from the most unexpected of places, because starting with the cover story that for so long has been the bane of some One Piece fans' existences, because it wasn't really going anywhere, it didn't seem to have any impact on the greater narrative. Then we reached Ringo stood before the shrine of a mysterious hero who died fighting Kaido, and I thought it would make sense if this mystery man had some kind of connection to the ongoings in the current main storyline in Elbaf, just as the Germa cover story did with Vegapunk's inclusion in that one back in Egghead. So I thought this was Shiki's grave. I was wrong. Others thought that this was Jigoro's grave from Thriller Bark. That was also wrong. And the true identity of this hero, when I say I was sitting there speechless at this reveal, I mean it. Their identity is none other than Kozuki Moria, not Gecko Moria, Kozuki Moria. This is the most shocking part of the entire chapter. For me, Kozuki. Of course, in Japan, the order of the given name and family name is switched, so Moria is the given name, so this can't be some relative of Gecko Moria, this surely has to be Gecko Moria, who is also from the West Blue as well. But speaking of relatives, Kozuki, am I being told this onion, this bottom-heavy bastard, is related to Momo, to Hiyori, to Oden, a branch family or something maybe? And apparently, I don't know if this is kanji or katakana, I'm not an expert, but in Japanese, Gecko and Kozuki are written with the same two characters, just switched. So the fight against Kaido would have been the very same one that occurred before he stole Shusui from Ryuma's shrine, and this battle took place a year after Roger's execution, so 23 years ago. So Oden was in the country at the time. He was dancing in the streets to save the people of Wano, which in itself was a heroic act. The one assurance that Oden had was that if he danced, those people who were meant to be sacrifices to Kaido, tributes to Kaido, would be freed. So he danced while his cousin, who knows, fought Kaido, even though he did get his ass beat. And the shrine has no body because Moria fled afterwards, raided Ryuma's shrine, and is still alive in the present. The last we heard of him was at the end of the Egghead arc, where there was confirmation that he escaped from Hachinosu thanks to Perona, who went there to rescue him just before or pretty much at the same time as when Garp went to rescue Kobe. So where he goes now, it seems pretty clear that it would be Cross Guild, because Mihawk is there, who's probably the only other person in the world she trusts enough, even if only barely, to go to afterwards. So what role he will play and how him being a Kozuki factors into all of this. Moria is 50, so 9 years younger than Oden. So there's the next question, how is he a Kozuki and where was he? The cover story calls him a pirate of justice as well. The Gecko Moria, before being defeated by Kaido, we know was actually a driven person who wanted to become king of the pirates, but there's no indication that he used to be just, although in the One Piece world, justice is a very fickle thing. Each person has their own idea of what justice means, and having said that, all we know about Moria's life before the battle against Kaido is that he was there at Roger's execution and nothing else. He is related to him. You know how the ancient giant's blood ran and runs thick through Harald and Loki's veins? The Kozuki blood must run extremely thin in Moria, because whatever beast they got with to make him their blood, their genes are doing 99% of the work here. But as a Kozuki, we know the ability to read the poneglyphs is passed down in that family and has been since they first crafted the poneglyphs. So can Moria read them King 2. The Straw Hats have Robin, the Blackbeard Pirates have Pudding, and Cross Guild has Moria. The thing is, we know about Wano's isolationist policy, so how could a Kozuki be born in the West Blue? So this could be more of an adoptive situation instead, but then you have to ask, how was he able to enter the country? Moving forward though, the chapter begins with the Roger Pirates, and like the rest of the pirate world, they were extremely upset by Shaki's resignation as leader of the Kuja Pirates, Roger pouting in the corner while his crew are discussing going to see her on the pirate island, and according to Gabon, Roger's current attitude came about after he and Rayleigh had a talk in the captain's quarters. So we see Rayleigh talk to Roger in confidence concerning something that happened before she stepped down, with Roger noting that the last time they fought she did seem to be sick, and we know what kind of sickness that is. We all know who she fell for. She left a letter for this man, for Rayleigh to meet up with her, a privilege that, in all seriousness, could have started a war if it had reached the ears on Hachinosu. And with how Roger is reacting now, upset that he himself wasn't the one to receive this love letter as he calls it, we see Rayleigh refuse to meet up with her, and his justification is kind of similar to how we saw Shaki herself reject Roger a couple chapters ago, because he didn't want to bind himself to anyone. But it's not that he wasn't interested, so even with his own ice cold exterior, he couldn't completely hold against her advances. That's the thing though as well, she sent him a letter, she is pursuing him. Put any of these other guys in Rayleigh's position, this might have killed them. While to Rayleigh's credit, he's only flustered here. But Roger is not giving up. Rayleigh is smiling in the corner. I can't tell if that's a nervous smile or if he's just happy Roger's back to normal and not sulking anymore. Either way, he's still after Shaki, so they set sail for the pirate island. Now moving to 40 years ago, 2 years before the God Valley incident, but Garling had other matters to attend to and happened to dock on the island, so it doesn't sound like he was planning to go to God Valley. Circumstances just led him there. He tried to get them to join the world government, but they refused, and given the island's immense natural resources, why would they want to join? They've been doing perfectly fine on their own, and upon doing so, they would have to unwillingly part with those resources by giving them to the government, who definitely would have demanded the people to do so. But Garling also mentions a huge discovery he's made, and whatever it is he finds leads him to informing the elders about it, and to whom he recommended to tell Emu about this as well, that they should hold the next native hunting competition there. So I'm sure he told the elders everything because they're the elders, there's no withholding information from them, and the same applies for the elders telling Emu. They don't withhold information from the ruler of the world, although we aren't told anything. I believe it has something to do with the island being so rich in natural resources, which now looks like was only the public justification for holding the competition here, you know, the reasoning they told the average celestial dragons. But I think that there was something within the island that allowed it to flourish, to be so rich, and logically thinking, I would say that thing could also be used as a power source. So what if whatever is within God Valley has something to do with the creation of the Mother Flame? That island was the key to utilizing one of the ancient weapons, which is what made it so important to Emu and also Rocks. That's what I think. Back on Hachinosu, Shaki's bar is thriving. Pirates from all across the world are hearing about it, and on top of the waiting queue, it's an expensive establishment. Cheap rum is passed off as high quality whiskey, and because it's Shaki, no one bats an eye. A rip-off bar through and through, and Rocks is happier than usual, with Shaki noticing that it wasn't directed towards her and asking if he had moved on from her, which is correct, with Big Mom now chiming in that a woman's intuition is a terrifying thing. To Rocks' anger, no one was supposed to know, and while Newgate is confused, Stussy thinks to herself as well that this can't just be because of a woman, it must be because of a kid as well. Right again. So this woman and child, Marshall D. Teach, and his mother, whose family name we know at least to be Marshall or Marshall D. So Rocks and his partner have welcomed a child child into the world, and coincidentally we're seeing Blackbeard's birth right after the latest episode of the anime, where Saturn mentions his special bloodline. Remember, everyone thought that he meant Blackbeard was a buccaneer, since this was right after Kuma's backstory. Dark skin, big body, he fit the bill close enough, but being the son of Rox D. Xebec is not bad either. So he joins the Whitebeard pirates at 12 years old. His father seemingly dies in 2 years time, so you'd assume that it was his mother who cared for him, more so after Rox died. But since Teach is alone on some island when the Whitebeard pirates arrive, and did look to be in some distress, you'd guess his mother also must have died within those 12 years as well. We won't see any of that here though, because it will stray away from the path this flashback is following. The Rox pirates are connected to Harald and the Giants, while Blackbeard or Teach and his mother are not. This is the first we have heard of her in the canon story, but the second altogether, following the concept art that was of her as an elderly woman alongside two of Teach's possible sisters. And with it being only concept art and being from so long ago, I'm of the opinion that in the story she won't grow to be an elderly woman, but instead, as I said before, she will die before Teach joins the Whitebeard pirates in 12 years time and enter the Roger pirates, who have arrived at the bar. And people like to say that this is rookie Roger. He's in his 30s during this flashback, and during this time up to God Valley, this may be before his peak, but he's still one of the biggest names on the seas, second biggest most likely after Rox himself. But to the pirates of Hachinosu who see Rox all the time, seeing Roger is an even bigger surprise, especially since Rox says this is his territory. Roger should not be here. Funnily enough, he says, "How many times do I have to tell you?" meaning Roger's done this before. Not that they would have totally hated each other, but given their respective positions, what would they do besides fighting when coming into contact with one another? At least to begin with, like we saw with Roger and Whitebeard in Oden's backstory. But they can't fight here because this is sacred ground. This is Shaki's bar. They are talking in no blood must be shed in such a precious location. He knows the rules of Shaki's bar as well as anyone. No fighting, so Roger can relax in this neutral ground without any repercussions. Step out of the bar, however, and I am sure all hell would break loose. Exhibit A, Roger mowing down everyone in the queue to make his way to the front of the line. A 1 month queue, remember, so he had to get through a lot of people. And with what Garling discovered earlier in the chapter, it seems there's more to God Valley yet to be revealed, so the incident happening won't be, or at the very least it won't solely come down to Shaki being kidnapped, because I still think that she will be, but I stand by my opinion, as controversial a decision it would be, that the incident occurring in part because of these guys lusting over a woman to the point where she's viewed as a goddess would have been hilarious. And you know what, her being the treasure of the pirate island made more sense than a big sapphire or something, and what is more precious than human life, am I right? It 100% helps her case that she is also beautiful, but those are the minor details. She then asks if Rayleigh is with them, but he stayed on the ship because he's not feeling well, which we know for a fact is not the case. He is avoiding her, and while Gloriosa is still trying her best with Roger as well, Shaki is clearly saddened by Rayleigh's absence, as much as she tries to deny it, with Roger also trying to play things off by asking for a drink with Newgate, who already left the bar because he didn't like the noise. He has a concerned or frustrated look on his face, thinking to himself why Rayleigh isn't coming, so it seems as though he's coming to understand Shaki's feelings for Rayleigh, so he's now pissed at Rayleigh for making her upset, and she faints. The love sickness kicks in. Even the untouchable beauty isn't immune to Amazon Lily's greatest curse. The narrator explains the rule she set of no fighting as long as her bar was the destination, which is why the queuing didn't break down long ago, because they weren't allowed to fight until Roger arrived, and who's really gonna tell him what to do? Plus, I'm sure Shaki would make an exception for Rayleigh's crew, but at sea there's no such rules to follow, and it's clearly being portrayed here that Roger even here was on par with Rocks. A lot of people have thought that Rocks was the stronger of the two, but it's clear here, to me at least, that they were as strong as each other. So talking about strength, to the underworld next, where Harald has accepted the offer from the elders to kill Rocks for them in exchange for becoming an allied nation of the world government. Technically they said if anyone from Elbaf can kill Rocks they would do this, but if we're being honest, Harald was the only one who would actually be able to do the deed. And do the deed he tries to do, because this fight is colossal. Literally and figuratively, it's the title of the chapter, and for good reason. This is a fight on the level of a Roger versus Whitebeard. I've said this already as well, but Harald is so comfortably in that upper echelon tier of fighters, along with Rocks, Whitebeard, Roger, Garp, and so on and so forth. Loki and Hyrudin are watching the fight, but understandably cannot withstand the force of the clashes and attacks. And it isn't just a clash, it goes on for a few pages, and you can see Rox's face. Disappointed and pissed, he kept trying to win Harald over because he thought he could, although he probably suspected himself that it was possible that one day they would come to blows, but that doesn't soften the blow for him, you know, that this is the path Harald chose to go down. And the truth is here that you can see both sides. Yes, Rock's goal of toppling the world government seems amazing because we know of that organization's tyranny, but would Rock sitting at the top of the world be that much better? Because Harald always called him a villain, and for good reason. We see the charismatic side of Rocks, which makes us root for him, but remember the list of crimes we were given. Remember how he beat and stabbed a kid Loki to get his way. He's a terrible person. And on the opposite side, Harald wanting to join the government makes sense because he wants to help his people, and you see how the other nations can't help but be fearful of the giants, so it's up to him to change not only his culture but their perceptions as well. And he understands the morally grey nature of the organization, and he's right in saying that there are still a ton of good people in it. That optimism has kept him pushing, but at the same time that optimism and naivety has blinded him to the whole truth. So both sides have their justifications and their drawbacks, and here neither of their hearts are truly in this fight. Neither of them really want to kill the other, and this is the end of their friendship, a friendship that in another life could have flipped the world upside down. But instead of them, it looks like that duty is going to fall onto the shoulders of Luffy and Loki in the present. But the narrator says they wouldn't meet again until that incident. Does that mean Harald was on God Valley? Because what other incident is there? And if he was, the question is, which side was he fighting for? Did he actually help the government kill Rocks that day, or did he fight with Rocks? His presence there is a massive game changer, and truthfully I'm leaning towards the side that he fought against Rocks again. And like I laid out before, as much as I would disagree with him doing so, I also wouldn't totally blame him either. No more chasing after Harald, so Rocks would not return to Elbaf after this, but those are his own words, not from the narrator. So here's a wild idea that has no evidence whatsoever and will depend entirely on what happens on God Valley. What if Rocks was there at the incident 14 years ago? That's the incident the narrator is talking about, because all we've been told is how Rocks died on God Valley, which makes you think the opposite. What if he lived? So I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know, but this flashback has been building up to the God Valley incident. So the narrator's words are trying to push you towards that. But what if somehow Rocks was on Elbaf 14 years ago, the day Harald died? But Loki still waited for him on the coast, reading the news, keeping up to date, and he also began warming up to Ida as well. So there's even more evidence for her being Mosa. If he grew close to her back then it makes sense the one person he's grown close to in the present would also be her. Ida is Mosa, the connective tissue between the brothers Loki and Hyrudin. Now to 39 years ago, 1 year before the God Valley incident, we see not in full a red-haired woman with 2 children. So who could this be? Red hair, maybe this is Kid's mother and the 2 kids are Kid himself and his brother, Mid. No, of course this is the wife of Garling and the mother of Shanks and Shamrock, who are these 2 kids, these twins. So it looks like they stayed on the island along with Garling, who was either preparing for the hunt in the near future or was looking deeper into whatever he found on the island. We know he becomes an elder, the godhead of science and defense, so if my mother flame idea is true, then it it's very fitting that he found this power or whatever, which would contribute massively to the world government in terms of scientific advancement. And maybe that's the reason why Saturn, the godhead of science and defense at the time, was on the island and not the other elders, because given his role as the godhead of science and defense, he went to see what Gorling discovered, and in this theory it would be this power source. So the people of the island speak to her about the kids, how cute they are, inheriting their mother's hair, and how they pray the kids will be as smart as she is, helping to care for them while their father is away, to which she is grateful. From that alone, there's a 99% chance that she isn't a celestial dragon who don't even know what it means to be grateful, and instead she was brought up from the lower world to be Gorling's wife. And I would like to think Gorling, being smarter than the average celestial dragon, wouldn't be the kind of person to mistreat her, but remember what Saturn did to Ginny and Bonnie. Who knows how he treated her or how many wives he even had. So with her, the native people are talking to her very comfortably with a sense of familiarity, so it's likely she is also from God Valley. We know Gorling was there about a year ago, so what if he met her and one thing led to another, either organically or celestial dragonly, if you know what I'm trying to say, and out come these red-haired twins. So she technically wouldn't have been brought up from the lower world, since Gorling had business on God Valley. She seems to have stayed there with him, so she never would have went to Marijwa. We see the two kids. She tells the villagers their names, Little Shanks and Shamrock. So Shanks ended up in one of those chests for protection, assumedly, during the incident, and this also means Shanks is his birth name. It wasn't the Roger pirates who gave it to him. What about Shamrock? Another chest maybe? One that wasn't taken by the Roger pirates or anybody? Maybe it was the two chests that held the two fruits, Kuma's and Kaido's, which would have been empty after the fruits were taken out. So less than 1 year remains before the God Valley incident, and I think it would make sense for the final chapter before it to end right on the eve of it. So I think there's one more chapter before we finally do see it, and we definitely will, because with all of this Rock's focus, how could there possibly be a better place to showcase it in the future? Next chapter I think will cover the fallout of Rock's and Harald's fight on both sides, Harald feeling ashamed, maybe upset, back in Elbaf. Maybe this is where he rips off his horns, or maybe he does it after he learns about the God Valley incident. I still think it will be after. While Rock's, on the other hand, will be forced to come to terms with the fact he will need to move forward without his former friend. He will need to go ahead without that piece of the puzzle, Harald, and that devil fruit. I think we'll also see more of Gorling and his family, I believe, so his wife, Shanks, and Shamrock on God Valley as he continues preparing or investigating, and the chapter will end with the incident finally kicking off, and from the Rock's pirates' perspective, them arriving at the shores of the island ready for a fight.